it just wasn't intuitive enough to do that. And it didn't, it just didn't make any sense for me to try to show them that back end stuff. Plus it takes so much time to adjust, that it really wasn't useful to do it live because it wouldn't feel in any way accurate, right? And it would look like I was fumbling around, which I wouldn't be, but it just would take forever. Like I would just sit there and say, all right, hang on a second, I'm gonna adjust these numbers over here. And oftentimes when I adjusted one number, I would then have to go and adjust a different number too to kind of balance out whatever I was trying to show them. So and it is obnoxious not to be able to revert back to your initial scenario, right, where you have your baseline, because like in sometimes you couldn't keep the base scenario without making a whole new scenario and then adjusting all the little pieces in that scenario, then going back. So yeah, it makes a huge difference to be able to do it in real time right in front of them. They think it's really neat, all those little levers that you can pull on, right? Like they're just like, oh, cool, I didn't know that you could do that, and that's so easy, rather than me having to go back and like switch numbers manually. It's just so much easier for them to see, like right on that one page how that works. Yeah, I would have a big report. I do still print out from the report pages on RightCapital, but it's not nearly as many pages as I used to do, and also my overall, like my written report has gotten shorter too, and partially that's because that's what my clients want, right? Like I have to pay attention to and say like, I might be loving a million spreadsheets, but it's not really useful for my clients, right? And the things that are useful for them are the things that are actionable today, right? Like they want to know that they're not going to live in a cardboard box when they get old, and they want to know how much they have to save right now in order not to have to do that, right? In order to maintain their lifestyle. So and they're really, as much as it hurts my ego to admit this, like they really don't care about all of the things that I care about, right? So it gives me peace of mind to know all the detailed numbers, but for them, generally speaking, and there are some exceptions to this, but generally speaking, I think our clients, they really just want to know what their own actionable items are, and they really don't care about all those details. They want to know that we know the details, but they don't really need to know them, which is why it's so helpful just to have those like big, overarching kind of numbers. So I think when people are struggling, they tend to underestimate the impact that small decisions make. So, for example, people often think when they're lower income that setting aside a small amount of money isn't going to make any difference. And so then it's just like, well, why bother? But that decision to not set aside the money can sort of snowball into a bad financial outcome later. Whereas if you make the positive decision to invest just a little bit starting early, that can snowball into a really positive decision. So I think our mindset kind of gets in the way of us having those better outcomes. Oh my gosh, people are always so shocked when you pull on the lever. So for anybody who's watching this who uses RightCapital, when you adjust those levers, when you increase spending just a little bit, or when you increase the amount of time that people are working just a little bit, or when you decrease either of those things, and there's all those other kind of little levers that you can pull on, but everybody is always really shocked at how big of a difference in the long term a small change today can make. So how it's really useful is when you're looking down the line, because most people aren't long-term thinkers, right? Like we still have lizard brain. We're still thinking about what's happening tomorrow and next year. But the power of RightCapital is that you can really see and show your clients in a really understandable way how those small changes that they make can really improve their long-term outcomes. So oftentimes, you know, if a scenario is looking iffy, I'll switch that retirement year to 2 years down the road, and then all of a sudden we're looking a lot better. And people are always really shocked, but it really does make a big difference. So so visually seeing the numbers go up is just incredibly important. It's not that they intellectually don't know what they should do. Where we come in, I think, is providing the motivation. So and to me, motivation comes from little wins. So when you're and the cool thing about looking at a software like RightCapital is that you can show them, you know, here's the little win. And then if you've been working with them for a few years, you can say, look, this is where we started. This is where we are now. We won. You did what you said you were going to do, and we won. And that's motivation to keep on going. I spend a lot of time in the cash flow tab under retirement. That's where I spend the overwhelming majority of my time, is in the cash flow tab. And it's just because I think that's what is really important to my clients. You know, they want to know what they can spend, and what they need to save. And it's so clear exactly where we're saying that they're saving and where we're saying that they're spending in those tabs. And it's also comforting, I think, emotionally, for them to look at it and see, like, oh, we can do this. Like, we do have the ability to save that much because Laura's built it in, and we've already, you know, we've established that this is how much we're spending. So I like how the numbers in that tab often kind of make what was seemingly impossible, like, it shows that it's totally possible, right? And it was almost like they couldn't believe that they could afford to retire. And even though I told, you know, I said, listen, like, I've run the numbers backwards and forwards. I put a lot of pressure on your expenses. I put a lot of pressure on inflation. Like, I've played with it all these different ways. I built a ton of conservatism into your scenario, and, like, it's still just fine. And but really the way that they believe it is by seeing those numbers. And saying, oh, wow, that income is covering our expenses, you know, and you're building in more spending than we've ever spent in our lives before, and we're still winding up with a large inheritance for our children. So it is a, and you know, I can put pressure on all these different things via the tabs in the retirement scenario development. And I can show them, like, look, even if you spend more, you know, even if you live a couple years longer, even if you do that, like, it's still all. So I think seeing those numbers just gives them that peace of mind that that just, like, words alone, you know, couldn't do.